Endurance is one of those issues that we as trumpeters have to deal with regularly. We only have so many notes we can play per day before we feel the pain. Now, of course, there are stories that Mendez practiced 10 to 12 hours per day, but you also hear stories that Herseth accomplished what he needed to in about 2 hours per day. Now, most of us mere mortals fall somewhere in between those two extremes. We need more than 2 hours per day to get ready for big performances, but we just don't have the ability, the physical ability to do 10 to 12 hours per day. So how do you prepare? How do you build your endurance? Well, I think there are two things to keep in mind. Number one, it doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. You don't expect a marathon runner to go from running 2 to 3 miles and then in a couple of weeks be able to do 26 miles. They have a very strict training routine that they do to build up to that 26 miles. Trumpet playing is much the same way. We cannot build up overnight. It's a process. The second thing to keep in mind is that in my experience, you build endurance best by increasing in short increments. I would increase my time by at most 15 minutes per day per session, probably. So, for example, during the pandemic, we had no motivation to practice, most of us, because there were no performances. And so, personally, I was barely able to do 30 minutes per day because mentally my heart just wasn't in it. So when I had my first big performance, I needed to work up endurance, and get to the point where I could do a full concert. So I did the first day 2 30-minute sessions separated by several hours. Then the next day, depending on how my chops felt and if I'd recovered sufficiently, I would do maybe 2 35 to 40-minute sessions. Or if it was increasing really well, then I maybe would do 2 45-minute sessions separated by a big chunk of time. Now, keep in mind that this is also dependent on what trumpets you're playing. So if you're doing a lot of piccolo stuff, that changes the whole landscape. 30 minutes on your C trumpet doesn't mean that you could do 30 minutes on piccolo. So if maybe your max is an hour on C before you get really fatigued, if that's your typical max that you can do before you need a big break, plan on reducing that by about 50% for piccolo, which means that you could probably do maybe 30 minutes of time on piccolo before fatigue sets in and you really need a big break. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that endurance is also greatly influenced by how much sleep you get. So it is essential that you get sleep to recover. Your body needs that for recovering and repairing cell damage that happens when we're practicing a lot. If you are not getting adequate sleep, your recovery is not going to be as efficient, and you are not going to be able to actually build up your endurance time as well as if you were getting normal amount of sleep, 8 hours of sleep. Maybe you laugh, maybe you scoff at that because the most you ever get is 6. That's a good night. Well, okay, whatever your normal is, get a normal night's sleep to be able to recover. The more sleep, more quality sleep you get, the quicker you recover, the more efficiently you're going to build your endurance. So consider using a strategic and methodical approach as you build your endurance to do a big performance, like a solo recital or something. You'll find that that's much more efficient than just running your rep every day and then expecting a miracle to happen. I know this from experience. That's how I tried it. It never worked. And then my performances, I always ended up super fatigued and couldn't figure out what was going on until I started practicing strategically and studied how other people built endurance, and then it turned things around. So try that, see if it works for you.